In the vast expanse of space, year 4782, humanity had become nothing more than a footnote in galactic history books. The once proud species that had reached for the stars was now believed extinct, vanished over 1,000 years ago without much explanation. The powerful Galactic Concordat, a union of 7 major alien civilizations, ruled the known universe with advanced technology and dismissive attitudes toward the lost human race. Admiral Tay, a blue-skinned, 4-armed commander in the Valerian Imperium, took particular pleasure in collecting human artifacts. His private museum aboard his flagship contained what he called charming primitive weapons, pistols, rifles, and even a missile launcher that seemed laughably simple compared to current Valerian plasma cannons. "Look at this crude projectile. Weapon," Tay would tell his guests at elaborate dinner parties, holding up an ancient assault rifle. They actually used chemical explosions to launch metal fragments. How did they not kill themselves more often? His guests would laugh, their various appendages shaking with amusement as they sipped from crystalline glasses. The Concordat scientists classified humans as a Level 3 development species, advanced enough to achieve interplanetary travel but lacking the biological or technological sophistication to survive long-term in the competitive galactic community. Museums throughout Concordat space displayed human items as curiosities, examples of an evolutionary dead end. On the distant edges of charted space, the atmosphere was less refined. Mining crews worked the asteroid belts of forgotten systems, breaking down space rocks for valuable minerals to feed the ever-growing Concordat economy. The mining ship Rockbreaker, captained by a gruff Urson named Dahl, had been working a particularly uninteresting asteroid cluster for weeks. "Another day, another worthless rock," complained Han, the youngest crew member, as their drilling equipment bit into yet another gray asteroid. His scales shimmered with frustration under the harsh work lights. "Stop whining and watch your sensors," barked Dahl from the command platform. "Company wants this sector cleared by month's end." The drilling continued for hours, until Han noticed something unusual on his readouts. "Captain, I'm getting strange density readings from Section 7. This doesn't match typical asteroid composition. Probably just a pocket of ice," Dahl muttered, but directed the drill to adjust course anyway. The drill bit screamed, then suddenly dropped through into empty space. Alarms blared across the Rockbreaker's systems. "We've breached something," shouted the operations officer. "Some kind of artificial structure inside the asteroid." When the dust settled, the mining crew found themselves staring at a perfectly sealed doorway embedded within the asteroid. The door was made of a material their sensors couldn't identify, with symbols etched into its surface that the ship's computer eventually recognized as human writing. "A human facility? Out here?" Dahl's voice carried genuine surprise. "Alert Concordat Science Division. They pay good money for human junk." 3 days later, a Concordat research vessel arrived. The science team, led by Dr. Sun, approached the discovery with casual interest. Human relics weren't uncommon, though finding an intact facility was somewhat rare. "Proceed with standard entry protocols," Dr. Sun instructed her team. "Remember, human technology is simple. Our tools should override any security measures easily." The team attached their advanced decryption devices to the sealed door, expecting quick results. Instead, their equipment sparked and failed. After several attempts with increasingly powerful tools, the door finally slid open with a hiss of perfectly preserved atmosphere. The corridor beyond was dark until motion sensors detected the team's presence. Lights flickered on, revealing a pristine facility that showed no signs of the 1,000 years that had passed. The scientists moved cautiously through the complex, their initial amusement at dealing with primitive human technology slowly turning to confusion as they encountered systems they couldn't readily understand. "This doesn't match any known human technological development," Dr. Sun said, examining a control panel. "These circuits shouldn't exist in human engineering of the recorded era." At the heart of the facility, behind another heavily secured door, they discovered the true purpose of the asteroid base. In an enormous hangar bay, suspended in a field of blue energy, floated a massive warship. Unlike the clunky, practical design seen in human historical records, this vessel was sleek, dangerous, and utterly alien to Concordat eyes. The ship was labeled HSS Vindication in human script along its hull. It showed no signs of age or wear. Its surface seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making it difficult to judge its true size and shape. Interesting museum piece, one of Dr. Sun's assistants remarked, though his voice lacked conviction. "Let's power it down and prepare it for transport," Dr. Sun ordered. "The Central Museum will want this centerpiece for their failed species exhibit." As the team approached the ship's access points, Dr. Sun pressed what appeared to be an entry panel. Instead of opening a door, the action triggered something else entirely. A low hum filled the hangar, and the blue energy field surrounding the ship intensified. A voice spoke in perfect concordant standard, startling the research team. "Stasis protocols terminated. Security breach detected. Sentinel defense system online." Across the ship's hull, previously invisible lines began to glow with internal power. The vessel wasn't dead. It had been sleeping, waiting. Inside the ship's command center, a single stasis pod began its awakening sequence. The pod contained a human woman perfectly preserved, dressed in a military uniform bearing the same insignia as the ship. Commander June, last captain of humanity's most advanced warship, was about to wake up to a galaxy that had forgotten what humans were truly capable of. The scientists froze as the ship hummed to life before them. The blue energy field pulsed, with increasing intensity, forcing them to shield their eyes. Dr. Sun's assistant dropped his scanning equipment, backing away slowly. "What did you do?" he whispered. "Nothing. I just touched the panel," Dr. Sun replied, her voice rising with panic as the ship's systems continued to activate around them. Inside the HSS Vindication, long dormant circuits awakened in perfect sequence. The ship's artificial intelligence Sentinel performed 1,000 system checks in milliseconds, its programming responding to the breach exactly as designed centuries ago. Life support restored, internal gravity stabilized, weapon systems in standby. Beginning revival procedure for command personnel, Sentinel announced to the empty corridors of the ship. In the heart of the vessel, inside a sealed chamber that hadn't known light for a millennium, a single stasis pod began its careful warming sequence. Frost melted away from the transparent cover, revealing the face of a woman who had closed her eyes when humans still walked freely among the stars. Commander. June floated in medical suspension, unaware that the galaxy had continued without her kind for 10 centuries. The pod's medical systems carefully warmed her body, restarted her heart at the appropriate moment, and began the delicate process of neurological stimulation to prevent brain damage during awakening. Outside the ship, the concordant scientists argued about what to do. "We should call for backup," one suggested. "It's just an old human ship," Dr. Sun countered, though doubt had crept into her voice. "Their technology is primitive. We'll shut it down manually." As they debated, doors slid shut around the hangar, sealing them in with the awakening vessel. The scientists rushed to the doors, pounding uselessly against the reinforced material. Back aboard the Vindication, Commander June's eyes fluttered open for the first time in 1,000 years. She gasped, drawing recycled air into lungs that had been still for centuries. Her body felt heavy, every movement requiring tremendous effort as she fought against the lingering effects of stasis. "Sentinel," she croaked, her voice barely a whisper. "Status report." The AI's voice filled her chamber, calm and reassuring. "Commander June, you have been in stasis for approximately 1,023 standard years. Revival protocols initiated due to security. Breach. 6 alien life forms detected in the facility. They appear to be concordant species." June tried to sit up, failing on the first attempt. "The mission? Earth? The colonies?" There was a pause, unusual for an AI, before Sentinel responded. "I regret to inform you that according to available data, no human communications have been detected for the past 873 years. The emergency beacon network is silent." The words hit June like physical blows. No communications. The beacon network, silent. She had gone into stasis knowing things were dire for humanity, but some part of her had always believed they would survive, that she would awaken to good news. "Help me up," she ordered, and mechanical arms extended from the pod to assist. Her muscles screamed in protest despite the preservation techniques used during stasis. In the medical bay adjacent to her chamber, June underwent rapid physical therapy guided by Sentinel's medical protocols. Stimulation treatments brought strength back to her muscles while her mind grappled with the implications of what she had learned. "Show me what's happening in the hangar," she ordered, after an hour of rehabilitation. A holographic display appeared, showing the group of alien scientists examining the ship's hull with increasingly sophisticated tools. They seemed to be trying to override the ship's security systems. "They're treating my ship like an artifact," June muttered, watching as one alien took pictures next to the Vindication as if it were a tourist attraction. "Correct," Sentinel replied. "I have access to their communications. They believe humans are extinct. They refer to your species as primitive and technologically limited." June's expression hardened. She remembered the final days before her stasis, the desperate battles, the overwhelming forces of the early Concordat, the decision to hide humanity's true technological capabilities in hopes of eventual survival. "Ship status?" she asked, moving to a storage unit that contained her uniform. "All systems operational. Stealth capabilities at maximum. Weapon systems ready. The Concordat researchers have been unable to penetrate any meaningful security measures." June dressed in the black uniform of the Human Defense Force, the insignia on her collar marking her as commander of a Vengeance-class warship. The uniform hung loosely on her stasis-thinned frame. "What about the facility's data archives? Have they been compromised?" "Negative, Commander. All secure archives remain intact, including Operation Phoenix protocols." A small smile touched June's lips. "So they don't know about the other facilities? About the others like me?" She made her way to the bridge of the Vindication, her steps becoming steadier with each passing minute. The bridge lit up as she entered, displays coming to life, the captain's chair rising from its recessed position in the floor. "Let's see what the galaxy looks like now," she said, settling into the chair. The main view screen activated, showing star charts with Concordat territories highlighted. June's expression grew grim as she saw how vast their empire had become in her absence. In the hangar, the scientists had finally called for reinforcements. A larger Concordat vessel was approaching the asteroid facility. "They're sending a cruiser," Sentinel informed her. "Military grade with weapons powered." June nodded, her hands moving across the command console with practiced ease. "Prepare for immediate departure. It's time to show them what human relics can really do." The scientists in the hangar backed away as the Vindication's engines began to glow. The ship rose silently from its docking cradle, the blue energy field collapsing around it as it prepared to leave its 1,000-year resting place. On the approaching cruiser, Admiral Tay himself watched the sensor readings with growing confusion. "What do you mean it's powering up? It's a human relic, a museum piece." "Sir," his second-in-command replied, "sensors indicate energy signatures we've never encountered before. The power levels are impossible." The Vindication burst from the asteroid facility, its hull absorbing light rather than reflecting it, making it seem like a ship-shaped hole in space itself. The Concordat cruiser immediately locked weapons but hesitated to fire on what they still considered a valuable historical artifact. That hesitation gave Commander June all the time she needed. "Sentinel, activate external communications," she ordered. "Let's introduce ourselves to the galaxy that forgot us." The face that appeared on every screen of the Concordat cruiser was unmistakably human, a species they knew only from historical records. Admiral Tay stared in disbelief at the woman in the black uniform, her eyes reflecting a determination that had supposedly died out centuries ago. "This is Commander June of the Human Defense Force," she announced, her voice steady. "Your scientists awakened me from stasis. Now I'd like some answers about what happened to my people." The HSS Vindication slipped away from Admiral Tay's cruiser like a shadow fading into darkness. Commander June had extracted what information she could from the stunned admiral, enough to know she needed to move carefully in this unfamiliar galaxy. The Vindication's stealth systems, technology that had been merely theoretical for most civilizations even now, rendered the ship virtually undetectable as it drifted away from the asteroid facility. "They're scanning for us," Sentinel reported as June studied the star charts on the bridge. "Standard concordate detection patterns. They have no idea we're less than 10,000 kilometers from their position." June nodded, her fingers tracing routes through unfamiliar territory. The star maps had changed. New outposts, colonies, and stations dotted systems that had been empty when she entered stasis. The galaxy had moved on without humanity. "We need information, Sentinel. Real information. Not the propaganda Admiral Tay was feeding us." "Recommended course of action?" the AI inquired. June's eyes narrowed as she considered their options. "Set course for the nearest major trade hub. We'll observe from a distance while you infiltrate their networks. I need to know what really happened to humanity." The Vindication moved with impossible speed, its drive system bending physics in ways the Concordat had never mastered. Within hours, they reached the Keldara trading station, a massive, ring-shaped structure bustling with ships from across the 7 major civilizations. From their hidden position near one of Keldara's moons, June watched the comings and goings with a mixture of wonder and sadness. Species she had never seen before mingled with aliens she recognized from the war that had forced humanity into hiding. They all seemed at peace now, united under the Concordat banner. "Sentinel, what have you found?" she asked after giving the AI time to slip into the station's information networks. "The official historical record states that humans abandoned their colonies following a series of natural disasters and plague outbreaks," Sentinel reported. "According to Concordat archives, humanity retreated to their home system and gradually died out due to resource depletion and internal conflict." June laughed bitterly. "A convenient story. Any mention of the purge, of the systematic attacks on our outer colonies?" "None, Commander. The conflicts that preceded your stasis have been purged from public records." She wasn't surprised. History was written by the victors, and humanity had apparently lost so completely that they could be written out entirely. For the next several weeks, June and the Vindication haunted the edges of Concordat space, gathering information while remaining undetected. They eavesdropped on military communications, downloaded historical archives from unguarded data centers, and occasionally observed Concordat citizens up close using the ship's advanced surveillance systems. The picture that emerged broke June's heart. The purge, the coordinated attack on human worlds that had driven her people to the brink of extinction, had been systematically erased from history. In its place was a narrative of human incompetence, portraying her species as primitive beings who had reached for the stars too soon and paid the price for their ambition. "Stop the recording," June ordered as they monitored a classroom on a major Concordat world. The teacher had been explaining to young aliens how humans had, naturally, failed as a species due to their biological and intellectual limitations. She stood from her captain's chair and walked to the view screen, staring at the frozen image of alien children learning lies about her kind. "They've erased us completely," she whispered. "Not just our bodies, but our very legacy." "Not completely, Commander," Sentinel corrected. "I have detected anomalies in population centers, individuals with genetic markers that suggest human ancestry." June's head snapped up. "Show me." The screen shifted to surveillance footage from various Concordat worlds. Sentinel highlighted specific individuals moving through crowds, beings that looked like the dominant species but with subtle differences in their gait, facial structure, or behavior. "They're hybrids," June realized. "Descendants of humans who survived somehow." "Correct. Further data suggests these individuals are generally unaware of their heritage. Most occupy lower social positions within Concordat society." A new mission formed in June's mind. Under the cover of the Vindication's perfect stealth, she began seeking out these hidden descendants. Using the ship's transport technology, another innovation the Concordat had never achieved, she would secretly board stations and planets to make contact. Gil worked as a maintenance technician on a remote fuel depot. His supervisor constantly criticized his work without explaining why. and he'd always felt different from his peers without understanding the reason. When a human woman appeared in his private quarters one night, he nearly triggered the station alarm. "You're like me," June told him, showing him genetic scans that proved his partial human ancestry. "Our people didn't die out, they were systematically eliminated, and the survivors were absorbed into concordate society, their heritage erased." Similar scenes played out across concordate space as June carefully contacted dozens of human descendants. Most had lived their lives feeling out of place, not understanding why. Some reacted with disbelief, others with anger, but many found a missing piece of themselves in June's revelations. "We're building a network," she explained to Dal, a spaceport worker whose great-great-grandmother had been human. "When the time comes, we'll need people who know the truth." As her hidden network grew, June turned her attention to the physical evidence of humanity's true technological capabilities. According to Sentinel's information, Operation Phoenix had included multiple hidden facilities like the one that had housed the Vindication. "The Concordate never found them all," June said, reviewing the classified files only she could access. "There should be 11 other facilities with ships and personnel in stasis." But before she could search for these bases, something else caught her attention. The Vindication's sensors detected unusual activity at a Concordate military installation. Using the ship's long-range surveillance, she discovered Admiral Tay preparing for a special exhibition. "He's displaying human weapons," June said in disbelief as she watched workers arranging artifacts in a large hall. Like trophies. The event was to be a significant military gathering. High-ranking officers from all 7 Concordate species would attend Admiral Tay's demonstration of primitive human technology. The Admiral himself stood proudly among the collection, handling an ancient human rifle with mock reverence. "These simple weapons were the best they could design," he told his audience in rehearsal. "Imagine facing our modern battleships with these toys." What the Admiral didn't realize was that the weapons in his collection were indeed toys, compared to humanity's true arsenal. The everyday items and basic military equipment that had been recovered from abandoned colonies represented only what humanity had wanted the Concordate to find. June watched the preparations with growing anger. The final straw came when she observed Admiral Tay practicing the highlight of his presentation, firing an old human sidearm at a target shaped like a human silhouette, to the rehearsed laughter of his staff. "Sentinel," she said quietly, her decision made. "Plot a course for the Concordate Military Academy. It's time to show them what human technology really looks like." As the Vindication silently changed course, June sent encrypted messages to her network of human descendants. The time for hiding was over. The galaxy had mocked human relics for the last time. The grand hall of the Concordate Military Academy gleamed under brilliant lights. High-ranking officers from all 7 species mingled, their various uniforms creating a kaleidoscope of colors against the polished stone floor. At the center of it all stood Admiral Tay, basking in the attention his exhibition had drawn. "Friends, colleagues, distinguished warriors," Tay began, raising his forearms for silence. "Today, I present to you artifacts from a species that reached for greatness but fell short. A cautionary tale for all civilizations." Behind him, display cases held what the Concordate believed to be the pinnacle of human military technology: simple projectile weapons, basic armor, and communication devices that seemed laughably primitive compared to current standards. "Observe. This handheld weapon," Tay continued, lifting a human pistol from its display. "It uses a chemical explosion to propel a metal projectile. The recoil alone made accuracy nearly impossible." He aimed the gun at a target bearing a crude human silhouette and pulled the trigger. The assembled officers chuckled as the bullet struck the target. Their largest warships, Tay gestured to a hologram of an old human cruiser, relied on rocket propulsion and carried weapons that would barely scratch the paint on our modern vessels. In orbit above the Academy, invisible to every sensor in the Concordate fleet, Commander June watched the presentation through the Vindication's surveillance system. Her hands gripped the arms of her captain's chair so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. "They're all there," she said quietly. "The entire Concordate High Command." "Correct?" Sentinel confirmed. All 7 fleet admirals are present along with 86% of senior command staff. June had not come to start a massacre. Despite everything she had learned about the Purge, despite the lies about her species, she refused to become what the Concordat had portrayed humans to be: savage and primitive. Weapon status? She asked. All systems ready, Sentinel replied. Targeting solutions prepared for demonstration scenario as specified. Below, Admiral Tay had reached the finale of his presentation. A massive view screen displayed historical footage of a human colony being evacuated during what the Concordat called the final decline of humanity. What the footage actually showed, June knew, was civilians fleeing a Concordat bombardment, one of the first attacks of the Purge, and thus, a species that lacked the biological and technological sophistication to survive faded into history. Tay concluded to appreciative murmurs. Their relics serve as reminders that not all who reach for the stars are destined to. The Admiral's words died in his throat as every light in the academy suddenly dimmed. The view screen behind him flickered, its image of retreating humans replaced by something else entirely: the bridge of a ship. At its center sat a human woman in a black uniform. "Good evening, Admiral Tay," June said, her voice echoing through the Academy's sound system. "I believe you've been spreading misinformation about my species." Pandemonium erupted in the hall. Security officers rushed to protect the high-ranking officials, while communications officers frantically tried to trace the signal. "Impossible," Tay whispered, staring at the screen. "You can't be human," June finished for him. "Very much alive, despite your Concordat's best efforts. You've been displaying our technology incorrectly, Admiral. Perhaps a demonstration of actual human military capability is in order." Above the Academy, the Vindication finally dropped its stealth field. The ship materialized seemingly from nowhere, its dark hull absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Concordat sensors blared warnings as they detected a vessel unlike anything in their records. "Scramble all ships," someone shouted in the hall. "Unknown vessel in orbit." "I wouldn't bother," June said calmly. "Your ships won't reach their hangars in time. Please observe." The Vindication's first demonstration was subtle, but profound. A pulse of energy, invisible, but felt by every piece of technology in the system spread outward from the ship. Throughout the Academy and across the entire military complex, weapons systems shut down. Defense shields flickered and died. Even personal communications devices ceased functioning. "A simple electromagnetic field manipulation," June explained, as panic spread through the hall. "Technology your scientists theorized might be possible in another century or two. We perfected it before I was born." On the Academy's long-range sensors, the officers watched in horror as their orbital defense platforms, the pride of Concordat military engineering, silently powered down one by one. "This is an act of war," Admiral Tay shouted, finding his voice again. June's expression hardened. "No, Admiral. The war began 1,000 years ago when your ancestors decided humanity didn't deserve to exist. What you're witnessing is merely the delayed response." Outside the Academy, the sky filled with light as a Concordat battle group emerged from hyperspace. 6 heavy cruisers and their escort vessels formed up, weapons targeting the lone human ship. "Vessel identified as human origin," the battle group commander transmitted. "You are ordered to power down and surrender or be destroyed." June didn't bother responding to the threat. Instead, she nodded to Sentinel. The Vindication moved with impossible speed, seeming to flicker from one position to another without crossing the space between. Before the Concordat ships could react, the human vessel was among them, dancing between their massive hulls like a shadow. One by one, the Concordat ships lost power. No destructive weapons were fired. Instead, the Vindication released precisely calibrated energy fields that disabled systems without harming the crews. Within minutes, the entire battle group drifted helplessly, their engines and weapons dead. Back in the Academy Hall, the assembled officers watched the display screens in stunned silence. "As you can see," June continued as if lecturing schoolchildren, "the weapons we allowed you to find were hardly representative of actual human military technology. The ship I command was built over 1,000 years ago, Admiral. Imagine what we might have created had your ancestors not attempted to wipe us out. Across concordate space, the scene repeated itself. The Vindication moved faster than any tracking system could follow, appearing at major military installations, disabling their defenses and broadcasting the truth about humanity's fate. The ship's demonstrations were precise and undeniable, showing technological superiority without taking a single life. At each location, June revealed another piece of the true history, how the early Concordate had feared human innovation, how the decision had been made to eliminate a potential rival before humans could spread further among the stars, and how the subsequent centuries had been built on lies, hidden communications networks, secretly maintained by the human descendants. June had contacted, spread the broadcast to civilian populations across concordate worlds. The carefully constructed historical narrative began to unravel as billions of citizens witnessed the impossible. A single ship from an extinct species systematically dismantling the most powerful military force in known space. By the time the Vindication returned to orbit above the military academy, the Concordate leadership had moved from denial to desperate negotiation. "What do you want?" Admiral Tay asked, his earlier arrogance replaced by barely disguised fear. "Revenge? Territory?" June leaned forward in her captain's chair, her eyes fixed on the Admiral's. "I want the truth acknowledged," she said simply. "I want the history, books rewritten. And then, Admiral Tay, I want to introduce you to the rest of us." "The rest?" Tay's voice faltered. June smiled for the first time since awakening. "You didn't think I was the only one sleeping, did you?" The great hall of the newly constructed Galactic Assembly sat silent as representatives from all 7 concordate species waited nervously. 3 weeks had passed since the HSS Vindication had single-handedly disabled the most powerful fleets in known space. 3 weeks of political chaos, public protests, and a complete re-examination of history that had been accepted as truth for a millennium. The massive doors at the end of the hall slid open. Commander June entered first, still wearing her Black Human Defense Force uniform, though she now carried herself with the confidence of someone who had accomplished what once seemed impossible. Behind her walked Admiral Tay and the other Concordate, military leaders, their postures stiff with wounded pride. But it was those who followed that caused a ripple of murmurs through the assembly. 12 humans, 6 men and 6 women, walked in formation behind June. Like her, they wore the uniforms of the Human Defense Force, though their rank insignia varied. These were the commanders of the other hidden ships, awakened from their 1,000-year sleep by June's coded signals. "Representatives of the Galactic Concordate," June began, her voice carrying effortlessly through the hall. 3 weeks ago I promised Admiral Tay that I would introduce him to the rest of humanity. Today, I fulfill that promise. She gestured to her fellow commanders. These officers led the 12 most advanced warships humanity ever built. Like me, they entered stasis as part of Operation Phoenix, our final contingency plan when it became clear the purge would not be stopped by conventional means. One of the human commanders, a tall man named Quan, stepped forward. Each of us commanded a ship equal to the Vindication in capability. Each ship guarded a stasis facility containing 5,000 human civilians, scientists, engineers, teachers, farmers, artists, the seeds from which humanity could regrow if given the chance. The assembly erupted in nervous conversation. Not just 13 warships, but 60,000 humans preserved in stasis, an entire civilization waiting to be reborn. June raised her hand for silence. "We did not come here for revenge. Had that been our goal, this assembly would not exist anymore. We came because truth matters, history matters." On the massive view screen behind the humans, images appeared. Recordings from 1,000 years ago showing concordate ships bombarding human colonies, civilians fleeing for their lives, cities burning. These were the true historical records that had been erased from public knowledge. The purge was not a natural disaster or a pandemic, June continued. It was a deliberate campaign to eliminate a species your ancestors saw as a threat. Not because we were violent or aggressive, but because we innovated too quickly, because our technology was advancing at a pace that frightened the early Concordat leadership. Admiral Tay stepped forward then, visibly uncomfortable, but resolute. The past weeks had transformed him from a proud military commander to a man forced to confront uncomfortable truths about his civilization's foundation. For 1,000 years we have built our society on a lie, Tay admitted to the assembly. The military council has confirmed the authenticity of these records. Humanity did not die out naturally. They were systematically attacked by our ancestors. The survivors went into hiding, and we rewrote history to paint them as primitive, failures rather than the victims of our aggression. A representative from the Lurisian species stood, their feathered crest bristling with agitation. If you have not come for revenge, Commander June, then what do you want from us? June's answer surprised them all. A place at the table, nothing more, nothing less. In the days that followed, the awakened humans met with Concordat leaders to negotiate humanity's return to galactic society. The terms were straightforward: acknowledgement of historical truth, reparations in the form of habitable worlds where humanity could rebuild, and immediate recognition of human descendants living throughout Concordat space. On a lush green world designated New Terra, the stasis pods from all 12 hidden facilities were carefully transported to the surface. Medical teams, both human and alien, worked together to safely revive the sleeping colonists. Children who had entered stasis with their parents took their first steps on alien soil, looking up at skies very different from the Earth their ancestors had known. Gil, the maintenance technician June had first approached about his human heritage, found himself appointed as liaison between the newly awakened humans and the descendants who had lived for generations without knowing their true ancestry. Thousands across Concordat space came forward, DNA tests confirming what many had always suspected. They were different because their bloodlines carried human genetics. The Vindication and its 12 sister ships now orbited peacefully above New Terra, their weapons dormant but their presence a constant reminder of humanity's technological capabilities. The ships became both protection and monument, symbols of a species that had refused extinction. 6 months after the awakening, Commander June stood on a hilltop overlooking the first human settlement on New Terra. The buildings were a curious mix of ancient human design and Concordat materials, representing the beginning of a new architectural style born from the merger of technologies. "Do you think we did the right thing?" asked Commander Kwan, joining her at the overlook. "Choosing peace instead of retribution?" June watched as human children played alongside the offspring of Concordat diplomats and settlers. Already, the youngest generation showed no care for the ancient conflicts that had nearly erased humanity from the galaxy. "Look at them," she said softly. "They'll grow up knowing both worlds. They'll be better than either of us could have been alone." Below them, in what had become the town square, a dedication ceremony was taking place. A joint team of human and Concordat artists had created a monument, a simple stone obelisk engraved with names of human colonies lost during the purge. It wasn't about dwelling on past horrors, but ensuring they would never be forgotten again. Admiral Tay had come personally for the ceremony, one of many Concordat officials working to make amends. He spotted June on the hilltop and gave a respectful nod, which she returned after a moment's hesitation. The wounds of history would take generations to heal completely, but the process had begun. "There's something poetic about it," Kwan observed. "They spent 1,000 years mocking what they thought were our relics, never realizing those were just the things we wanted them to find." June smiled. "And now they're helping us build museums to preserve both sides of our shared history, the truth and the lies side by side so no one forgets." Later that evening, June returned to the Vindication for what would be one of her final visits to the ship. Soon the vessel would be converted into a permanent installation, part museum, part academy where both humans and Concordat species could study together. "Sentinel," she called as she entered the bridge. "Status report on the integration protocols." "Proceeding. As planned, Commander," the AI responded. "Human technology is being carefully introduced to Concordat systems. Estimated time frame for full technological sharing, 15 years. June nodded with satisfaction. The gradual sharing of technology had been her idea, not withholding humanity's advancements out of spite, but introducing them slowly to prevent economic or social disruption. As she prepared to leave the bridge for the last time, June paused at the view screen showing both New Terra and the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, according to ancient star charts, was Earth, the original homeworld. Her ancestors had left behind generations before she was born. Perhaps someday they would find it again. Computer log final entry, she said. Commander June, Human Defense Force. The mission of the HSS Vindication is complete. Operation Phoenix has succeeded beyond our founders' hopes. Humanity does not merely survive. We have returned to take our place among the stars. She placed her hand on the captain's chair one last time, feeling the connection to everyone who had served before her and the 1,000-year journey that had brought her to this moment. And this time, she whispered, we're here to stay.